Welcome to another Tea Time with me, Amanda Prochaska. I am so thrilled to be joined by Zach Koitka today. He is one of the newest members on our team. He is a change management expert through and through, and he has a pretty cool accent. Right, Zach?
I think, yeah, some could say that.
Okay, all right. Now we heard it, so people can make up their own determination, I guess, from here. So Zach and I are going to be talking about today a change management program that he has been working on, one of the many he's worked on for us, just to show a little bit of the work that he does day in and day out for our clients. We're also going to ask some fun questions of Zach today to get to know him a little bit better. So, Zach, first of all, since this is tea time, what are you drinking today? What is your beverage of choice?
So we call it like a flat white or just a coffee. This is probably the first of three I'll have today. I do rely on it quite a lot. So I'm a massive coffee fan. Yeah.
All right. I have very simple water bottle. Always
Nice.
trust my
Water's
trusty
good.
water. Yeah, electrolytes today. I was feeling a bit thirsty. It's getting hot around here in Vegas, so wanted to make sure that I'm drinking plenty of water. But it's morning time for you as we're recording this, so coffee is very appropriate. So
Yeah,
there you go.
exactly.
All
Exactly. And we're
right.
starting to get into our cooler months as well. So
Okay.
yeah, so more reason for a warm drink.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so before we get into the work that you've been doing with our clients, why don't we ask you a fun question so we can get to know you a little bit more? So the first fun question would be if you could travel back in time and give yourself some change management advice, what would that advice be?
Yeah, so thinking back to when I first started, I definitely think it was a baptism by fire, but I learnt a lot from that, right?
Yeah.
Especially started off as like a change analyst and then just worked my way up there. I think for me, I th the advice would be don't be afraid to, if there's a problem or a concern or something you're hearing from the ground or response, don't be afraid to kind of experiment with that in the sense of, oh, you think you might have a couple of options that may work. Like, don't be afraid to just go and actually execute them based on that feedback and then go again. So whether you think you need to do something with engagement, whether you think you need to do something with communications, whatever that is, don't be afraid to do that because
Hmm.
again, just based on that, and you can pivot and you might find something else out that you can act on. So I guess it's like not being too rigid and don't be afraid to experiment with whatever that is on your change plan. And probably the biggest learning, and I think it just comes off the session or the meeting we had earlier today, is just
Yeah.
that meaningful dialogue piece. Like
Yes.
it's just so big and it's so important. And it's not, don't think you need to have this big grand plan. It's honestly just set up that call for 15 minutes with a stakeholder that you think is going to be beneficial and just start that conversation. And it just there's so much power in that.
Yep.
And you can even just instilling that confidence in your key stakeholders, whether that's sponsors or whatever that is, around just doing the same thing. You just get so much information, so much intel out of that as well. So I think that's what I'd tell myself. So
Well, you just hit on, our methodology, Alice, which I talk a lot about on this channel. You hit on the L and you hit on the C. So L is leading with love. And I tell leaders all the time to lead with love. The most simple way that I can put that is listen, right?
yeah,
Every opportunity or every communication that we're doing, it's not just to share information out. The main goal should be listening to the feedback, right? So give opportunities to give feedback because feedback is the kind of the heart of how change works. You need to make sure that people feel listened to because if they feel listened to, they feel loved and more trusting of the process. We don't talk about that enough. But then the other part was creating community, creating space where people can have meaningful dialogues, so often overlooked, even if it's just to get on a call to ask questions. Right?
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
powerful.
Exactly right. And I think that's a big
Yeah.
one too. Just like as a change manager, it's like you just facilitate that environment or get that environment with the right people in the room and you can just get so much information out of that just from that conversation. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. And we're so thrilled to have you, Zach, on the team at Wonder Services and showcase some of the work that you've been doing for us today. Can't wait for many, many, maybe hundreds more stories that we can share in the future. But we thought we would share one today. So
Mhm.
we don't usually share like the names of the clients, but if you can
Of course.
share kind of what the client was trying to achieve, what problem they were facing, just to give us kind of a landscape of who the client is.
Yeah, so I'd say around 4 or 5 months ago, a client approached us, and it was really specific to a training need that they requested
Hmm.
our support on. I think there was a number of reasons why that was. It was a capacity, internal capacity. I think there was some other things involved as well around just the timing that they had in terms of the runway to
Yeah.
deliver training. So yeah, so it was time, and then it was also having they had no internal capacity to be able to actually solve that. So that's what it was. So it was basically setting up their training needs. So
Hmm.
everything from training needs analysis, making sure that validating that training curriculum, making sure that it was a clear, I guess, plan for their trainers, onboarding, and then also the scheduling and everything that's tied to that training and the delivery piece as well. There was
Hmm.
definitely some bigger changes, or sorry, challenges that did appear when we started to lift the hood, I guess.
Yeah.
And that was just, I guess, just the experience that we could offer and propose to the client around how they do their training needs
Hmm.
analysis, how they pull those lists, and the way they did it was very challenging. And I don't think they realized that at the time.
Yeah.
Pulling from multiple different sources and lists of stakeholders, and the way they map to their courses and their people, their system
Hmm.
roles was really just yeah, it wasn't, I would say, like best practice, and they didn't
Hmm.
know what they knew at the time. So just
Yeah.
being able to offer that experience and to go in there, it was just something that we were able to get on top of quite early because we had the ability to be able to consolidate that and do it in a way that helped them actually be able to deliver training. And
Yeah.
on such a short runway, that was hard, right? Because that actually meant we had to invest a lot more hours in unpicking those
Yeah.
lists, that TNA, that was probably one of our biggest challenge and trying to stitch that back together, but then also allow the time for the business to validate that to make sure it was correct. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was probably the one in the last 5 or 6 months, which was a big one in terms of what that problem was and really what we were trying to achieve or resolve for them.
Yeah. And so many people, when they think of Wonder Services, obviously they think of change adoption, but and a lot of procure tech implementations. But in this particular case, it was a merger and acquisition, which was really cool. So we work on all kinds of different change programs and
Mhm.
being able to train people who are going from one company and as they're merging into another company and bringing them into the mix is a huge undertaking. So I wanted to point that out because it's very unique. I think just to be thinking about the broader picture of change and how we can support people. So when you think about the challenge that you had of, when you started in, you had all of these different lists and you were trying to get, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to role-based training, which means you need to understand not only who the people are, but what role they're going to have in the new process and technology. So can you talk about how you went about solving that issue and why maybe role-based training is important for people to consider?
Yeah. So which way? Pause. 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 Which way can I go
Okay,
here?
that's okay.
Which way can I go here? Um, just trying to remember how we actually. So I know the SMEs were trying to. Yeah, so the SMEs, they were trying to map it. The way they mapped it was wrong. Well, the way they had inconsistency. So there was no, yeah, okay. So they had no consistency in the way they were doing it. And then also with the role-based learning, it's obviously because we want to make sure it's tailored to the end user.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, can
Okay.
we pick that back
Okay.
up? Do you want
Yeah.
to?
Yeah.
We'll,
So I'm
we'll be able to stitch that, hey? Definitely. Yeah, yeah.
okay. We'll just pause here. Do you want to just answer the question or do you want me to re-ask the question?
I think did what's easier to stitch? Us.
If we just pause and then you go into the answer.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
So with this particular client, or in that challenge that I just spoke about, it was really, there was a few things at play. So when we were trying to do that role-based learning, coming back to our curriculum and TNA, what we found was that the SMEs that were involved and trying to actually build out that curriculum, there was inconsistency in the way they were mapping basically the roles.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a challenge number one,
Yeah.
because obviously meant there was inconsistencies in who we were going to be trying to identify and who was needing to be trained in. Were they actually assigned to the correct training as well? So that was the main issue. So what we had to do, or what we tried to do, was we actually tried to then build a source of truth that we could actually do our mapping from, which then it came into the consolidation. And then there was a lot of work and working with some of the SMEs from the business as well in trying to pull that together in a way that got us that consistency. So a lot of Excel formulas, a lot of trying to bringing that together. And then we were able to then just have that kind of source of truth, which then we were able to then do our assigning of our courses of that. So I know I'll probably talk at a very high level there and talk through that in a couple of steps, but that was like nearly three to 4 weeks of work there to try and get to that point where we could just go to the business. Okay, we're ready to now validate that and just make sure that the way we've assigned those courses is correct and we haven't missed anyone. And the importance of role-based learning, and it is such an important one for anyone that's embarking on digital transformation to keep on mind. And it's really just based on ensuring that that learning pathway is tailored to that end user is probably the biggest one. It is the main one. But also that role-based learning ensures that like I've already mentioned a couple of times, who you're actually training, who in what. So it gives you that clarity. And it gives you that ability to be able to visually see that when you're trying to pull together your training plans and those TNA's curriculums as well. So it gives you that insight. And role-based learning, is probably one of the biggest things. It's the core of what we do, especially around our training delivery. It's the first thing that we have in mind to make sure that users getting the most out of, or that end users getting the most out of the training, and they're not just going to a training session for the sake of it. We actually have intent and purpose behind it. Yeah.
And we can speak their language, right? Like that's
exactly.
another big thing. Like you don't want to sit in a training and you're like, why are they talking about something that I don't do and I don't relate to? Or you're using language that's just doesn't land well within the training.
Yeah, and just from an end-to-end perspective, right, as well, it's so important. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm sure they benefited from your knowledge and expertise of doing these role mappings, if you will. Over and over and over and again. So you knew what you were looking for, which is something like they were trying to do it on their own before they brought you in, and you're like, time out, this is not going to work. This is how we're going to pull it together and get to the outcome that we were driving for. So you were able to, I'm sure, get them to a much better position for that training than they could do on their own.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it was such a big, took a lot to get to that point, but we actually met the training deadline. We delivered training, so training was delivered, and I think in the end, it may have only been maybe 2 or 3 roles that we saw that were potentially that we had to go back and loop back to for a training course. And in the scheme of things, across what we had to do, what we had to bring together was a really good result, and the client was really, really happy. Met the deadline. They knew what we were working against. They knew the challenges. And that was another thing too. We didn't come in, we didn't try to hide what we were seeing. We were very transparent with that from the start. Yeah. And just said, look, we probably need to start tracking this as probably like a medium to high risk, but this is our mitigations and how we're going to go about that. And we try to make sure that just having that transparency from the start worked in our favor too, right? They knew what we're up against, and we could show them. But the fact that we showed that mitigation, we could still meet the actual deadlines and still deliver it with a really good result. It was just, we were really happy for the client, because it was challenging, and I really felt for them, because if we had probably been there earlier, if we could just give a little bit of that advice maybe 2 months prior, if we were involved, it just would have solved a lot of heartache for them. So we did feel for them, but potentially they're looking at an Eastern Hemisphere rollout maybe back end of the year. So a lot of learnings there, and hopefully we can help them out if we get on that one. So
Yeah, it's actually funny. I saw them last week and they were I shouldn't say it was funny. It was nice to hear, right? They approached me and said they were speaking volumes of the work that you and the team did. It was one of the major concerns that the acquired company had was to make sure that their people fully knew what their new roles were going to look like and how they were going to execute the work day to day. And between your work and the partnership with the client, that was able to be accomplished. So kudos to you. Job well done. One thing that I wanted to ask you as I wrap up, like if you think about that project, how did you work with the client to make sure that the training could go on post you whirling off? Like, how is this sustained within the client? So as new people are coming on, or even if they acquire a new company, they kind of know how to do this moving forward.
Yeah, so that whole post go live, I guess your transition to BAU, the whole go sustainment
Mhm.
plan, is what the way we set up in terms of structure. We make sure that that contact point, which is like normally a weekly cadence, is not missed. Is we stay on top of
Mhm.
that even throughout training, so make sure we're tracking
Yeah.
training as it's being delivered. But then when we get close to that go live and we start looking at post go live, post even hypercare and how we embed this, it's making sure we set up another like structure in terms of, okay, now that we've got our trainers trained, it's okay, how can we actually then do further support and mechanisms in terms of making sure that those end users are supported. So usually we base that off what's coming out of the training feedback.
Yeah.
So our surveys that we run, how many people have attended. Then as we head into the actual post go live, it's actually getting that other data as well. So where are we starting to hear, I guess, some noise on the ground? Where are we potentially in our data? There's certain transactions that we may have low uptake across the business, or where certain things are being completed. That then allows us to narrow down in terms of our focus areas. And again, like I just mentioned, identify those mechanisms or potentially that we need to trigger to make sure that we are providing that ongoing support for our end users. So that can take shape in the form of extra targeted training sessions with our
Hmm.
trainers. It can be Q&A forums. There's multiple things that we can leverage to make sure that that's not, it's just that it just doesn't stop at go live, right? It's
Right.
making sure that that is, and just on that, we do try to build that in the mindset of our client too.
Hmm.
It's not just, you got to look past just that, the implementation, I guess, is what we want to
Yes.
call it. We do have to look at that ongoing. And of course, we support the client with that. It's a lot to take in while they're implementing, but we do try to drop those little pieces of information throughout and make sure that we reiterate that. But it's actually looking past that go live in many ways as well
Yeah.
and go, okay, how can we sustain and embed that change? So, and it's making sure that, like I mentioned too, is just that structure stays in play as well.
Yeah.
Like making sure that your partnership and that dialogue with the client doesn't just drop off. It's not like, okay, we go live with that's it, we're done. It's like, no, let's actually now keep these going. Maybe we don't need them as frequently, but it's just changing that nature of the conversation too, which is now focused on, okay, how do we now do this? It's almost two pronged. It's the uplift,
Yeah.
because you only start, that base. It's really just the baseline from go live, so that improvement, and then also the embedment and the sustainment as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's a huge component. I tell people all the time, go live is just the beginning,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like if you look at that as like the first line of the marathon. And a lot of people don't think about it that way. They think the go live is the end of the marathon. But I
yeah,
always like to say, okay, if you're running a marathon, all the work that you do to get to the point where you can run a marathon is what we do pre go live. All right.
yeah, yeah.
So, and I know you're a rugby player, so you're not a marathon runner, but all the
No, no,
practice
yeah,
that you do to get to the point to play a game,
yeah,
right? And then you start the game, and that's actually just the starting point of how you play the game then moving forward. Same with the marathon. You cross that first line and then you have to run the marathon. And so we always have to be thinking about when change, there's a lot of practice that goes on to get prepared for the go live. Like there's a lot of work that we do, but that go live is just the starting line. And there's a
yeah.
lot that we have to do post.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's no, exactly right. And I think that
Yeah.
also though addresses things um like just make sure you celebrate those little milestones too,
Yes.
because it's the whole reason why, because it is a long journey.
Hmm.
And you need to make sure that those celebrations are happening, and as you reach each of those milestones, to kind of keep not only that rapport, but that morale up as well. Because yeah,
Yes.
like we said, it's a hard thing to digest when you're just in the middle of design, and you obviously you wouldn't be bringing up then, but there's just so much going in from
Hmm.
implementation phase that there's still that kind of bigger picture they need to keep in mind, which is why you pick your moments, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's why we talk about delight all the time, right? Those little moments of delight can go a long
Yep.
way.
Yep.
And we can't forget that any transformational journey, at the heart of it all is people. And people
Yep.
have emotions, they have backgrounds, they have things going on in their lives. And the more that we treat them as people, and have moments of delight and celebrations and bring people along, the better off everyone is going to be at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you, Zach, are so great at doing that. So we're thrilled to have you on the team. One last question for you.
Hmm.
We're going to wrap up here, but one last question. What emerging trend do you see in change management these days? What's a new trend that's coming out?
Oh,
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry,
it's
but
okay. I don't think it's really new, but like I'm probably going to sound pretty boring and redundant, but like obviously AI comes to mind, but
yes,
it's just
yeah,
such a growing space at the moment, like emerging. It's just very things are just being released so quickly. Like I know there's talk about the agents coming out
yeah,
now, and workflows. Yeah, it's just a wild space at the moment.
it
And I just
is.
think how that's being incorporated from I guess like a practical sense in change management, or how we can leverage that, I think is always going to be an interesting conversation, and just where we're going to be in the next, yeah, I think couple of months, but
Oh
versus,
yeah,
5 years
yeah,
and
yeah.
10 years. So I think I'm interested I'm always keeping an eye on it. But I know it's been around for a little while and people are always talking about it, so I think people are getting a bit bored of it, but I think it's very interesting, and just the potential of the future is just wild to try and get my head
Yeah.
around it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually love that you brought this up. I was just talking to someone today who was working on a 3 year long project. And the change needs for a 3 year long project are very different than 8 different smaller projects that get done in 8 weeks,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
And so if you think about change management used to follow a project along like that, the 3 year long project, the project that you were just talking about, it was a longer project.
Hmm.
But if the change needs for an organization where there are 8 larger projects going on, but they only take 8 weeks to deploy and they're all happening at the same time, that's the reality of the world that we're going to be living in. That's a very different change need. In fact, that's why I didn't pay you to set me up for this, but you set it up perfectly. That we launched Ray a couple weeks
Hmm.
ago, and that's rapid adoption enablement, and that's all the focus. Like, how do we meet the needs of the environment that we're working in now, where people are more burnt out than ever, they're more lonely than ever, and they have more change fatigue than ever before. All of those numbers are at record highs. So how do we as leaders come to the table with something different to help support that organization? And that's what Ray is all about. So thanks for plugging me without even knowing it.
Oh, it's such an important piece. So yeah, happy I did it.
All
Oh,
right. Well, thank you, Zach, for everything that you do for us. It was nice chatting with you today. If you loved this video, please check out the rest of our Tea Time series. Hit the like button and subscribe. I'm Amanda Prochaska. I'm the founder and Chief Wonder Officer of Wonder Services, and I love bringing talented people like Zach to the table to help you with your digital transformations, but then also bringing you valuable content so you can learn along the way. The more we share and learn, the better off we all will be. So, with that said, cheers. Hey, drink up that coffee, Zach.
yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers. Thanks,
Thank you
Amanda.
very much, and have a great rest of your day.